and above. Again, these are the old geographic maps that I showed you 8 days ago, and changing to the new graph now, you can see that the purple areas have increased and there are some new areas of increased rate of change in the over 60s. And I really want to emphasise that it is the over 60s that really worries us most, because these are the people who become severely ill with COVID-19. They are more likely to be admitted to hospital. If they are admitted to hospital, they stay in hospital for longer, and sadly, they are more difficult to save. Next slide, please. So here are the data broken down by age band and by English region, beginning with the North East, the North West, Yorkshire and Humber. And really, each of these subplots is a contrasting game of two halves, in as much that the 10 to 19 and 20 to 29 age group, you can see that the weekly case rate has declined on all of those traces. Now, this may be partly ascertainment. It may relate to the rate at which people are coming forwards for testing, which is now flat, because the rate of swab positivity continues to increase. But the other half of the coin, if you like, are the older age groups from 30 to 39 through to 80 plus. And here you can see over time this continuing increase in case rates. And this really shows us now that the infections which have seeded in the younger age groups are now penetrating those older age groups as we go forwards in time. And these are cases. This means that the hospital admissions and the deaths, sadly, that are linked to those cases are now baked in for the next 2 to 3 weeks. Next slide, please. These are the same graphs again, but this time for the East Midlands, for London and the West Midlands. You can again see, particularly in the East Midlands and related to Nottingham particularly, that drop in the 10 to 19s and 20 to 29s, but the continuing increase in case rates in the other ages. Next slide, please. And the same is true of East of England, South East and South West, but at much, much lower overall levels of disease than we are currently seeing in the north of England. Next slide, please. Now again, I'm referring back to the heat maps that I showed you on the 12th of October, showing that gradual warming up of disease rates in the 16 to 29s that then creeps through into the older age groups with a few weeks lag as we move through the age bands as we go up each of the blocks. That's the visual snapshot from the 12th of October. I'll now move to the new snapshot. And I think it's pretty stark. I think you can see very clearly now from these data that are just a week on how those heat maps have increased very markedly, not just in the northeast, not just in the northwest, but also in the East Midlands, top left, and in Yorkshire and Humber, bottom right. This is most concerning because it's the penetration of disease into the older age groups that gives the NHS significant problems. Next slide, please. And indeed, here are the weekly COVID-19 hospital admission rates in England by age group. And you can see very, very marked and very steep increases for 85 plus, 75 to 84, and 65 to 74. And some of you, the eagle-eyed amongst you, will say, well, these data extend up until the 11th of October. I will show you some data that go further than that, though they are not segregated by age, but the pattern is the same. Next slide, please. Before I do so, these are the ICU and HDU admission rates. You can see that same very sharp rise in 75 to 84s, 65 to 74s, and 45 to 64s. But